1967, a quiet storm was brewing inside American pockets. A simple 1-cent piece, bearing the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, left the Philadelphia coining facility without a mint mark, ordinary to the untrained eye, but for a few collectors, it has become a harbinger of unimaginable profit. Some examples have reportedly traded hands for values soaring towards 6 and even 7 figures. How does a coin that cost a single cent become worth more than a luxury home? The answer lies in a moment of American history when trust in the minting system was wavering. The U.S. Mint had been overwhelmed by coin shortages in the mid-1960s. To streamline production, they temporarily removed mint marks from circulating coinage between 1965 and 1967, hoping it would discourage collectors from hoarding new issues. What they did instead was the opposite: they created a mystery. A blank coin now carried the suspense of origin, and sharp-eyed collectors hunted for the rarest, sharpest strikes, coins that stood apart in a flood of mass production. The 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln 1-cent piece is a textbook example of how a coin story becomes part of its value. Most were struck quickly with tired dies, and quality suffered. But a tiny handful, perhaps just a few that survived in pristine, untouched condition, show razor-sharp detail in Lincoln's beard, wheat texture in the memorial steps, and fully original luster. These high-grade survivors can stun seasoned numismatists at auction. Here is where things get interesting. Imagine a forgotten 1967 Lincoln cent sitting in an old dresser drawer for decades, never spent, never touched, never slid across a cash register counter. Today, a perfectly preserved example graded at the top of the professional scale, MS 67 or MS 68 red, can ignite bidding wars. One exceptional piece reportedly drew offers approaching life-changing territory, more money than many Americans earn in a year. And that raises the inevitable question: how many more are still hiding in plain sight? Collectors know the psychology well. The thrill of possibility. The fear that someone else owns the treasure you never bothered to look for. And that's not just emotion, it's economics. In numismatic markets, scarcity is amplified by desire. When a coin is not only rare, but also tied to a historic disruption at the United States Mint, it becomes more than metal. It becomes a fragment of national memory. Pause for a moment and consider something surprising: more than 3 billion Lincoln cents were minted in 1967. Statistically, nearly all should be worthless. Yet a tiny fraction, a microscopic slice, can command staggering prices. The difference between pocket change and a small fortune comes down to condition, survival, and the collector narrative surrounding it, and that narrative is powerful. These cents represent the moment when Americans stopped trusting the mint to make enough money, and the mint, in turn, tried to stop Americans from hoarding. Ironically, that struggle created some of the most desirable mid-century Lincoln cents in existence. So what should a collector look for? Start with stunning, untouched brilliance, original mint red color, clean fields, zero circulation marks. Then examine the details: strong strike lines in Lincoln's coat, clear separation in lettering, and sharp edges on the memorial structure. Coins that still look the way they did the moment they left the press are the ones that change bank accounts and rewrite price guides. And here is the quiet truth: someone, somewhere, still has one. Maybe stored in a childhood coffee can. Maybe inside a late parent's coin jar. Maybe mixed in with rolls purchased from a bank decades ago. Wealth often hides where people least expect it. This is why seasoned collectors keep searching. They understand that every common coin has a story, and every story has the potential to produce a financial surprise. The 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln cent is more than an old piece of copper. It is a reminder of how American money, real money, changes in value long after the cashier has handed it back. It shows that opportunity in numismatics is not always loud, obvious, or predictable. Sometimes, it jingles softly in the pocket until someone finally looks closely, and if you have one of these 1967 survivors in top condition, you may not be holding a penny at all, you might be holding $1 million piece of American history. An ordinary Abraham Lincoln 1-cent piece dated 1968, struck without a mint mark, selling not for $1, not for 1,000, but for amounts collectors whisper about in auction lobbies with stunned disbelief. A coin that should buy a stick of gum becoming a life-altering discovery. It sounds impossible, until you understand how the smallest variation in American coinage can flip the financial world upside down. The year is 1968. America is still processing the loss of President Kennedy. The moon landing is officially only months away. And inside the Philadelphia Mint, millions of Lincoln cents flow from the presses, machine-stamped, routine, copper compositions representing an unchanged slice of everyday currency. But somewhere in that ocean of output, fate intervenes. A small number, possibly just a handful, emerge with a combination of condition and striking precision so rare that decades later, they shake the market like an unexpected earthquake. Most people spend a 1968 no-mint mark Lincoln cent without a second thought. After all, Philadelphia coins traditionally bear no mint mark. But collectors of advanced experience know the truth. Rarity isn't just about where a coin was struck, it's about why one example survives in a condition so perfect, so untouched, that it becomes a once-in-a-generation treasure. So what makes these coins explode in value? The first hint lies in the grading table. While most 1968 Lincoln cents found today carry the scars of vending machines, pocketware, and decades of circulation, the rare survivors graded at the highest professional tiers, PCGS or NGC, have triggered bidding wars. A flawless or near-flawless specimen with razor-sharp detail, full copper luster, and no visible abrasions can turn a common date into a six-figure titan. And yes, a perfect example has been valued in the millions when factoring in private sales, provenance, and the prestige of owning possibly the finest known example on earth. Think about that, a coin millions of Americans touched, carried, dropped in glove compartments or mason jars, now commanding a price that rivals vintage sports cars and seaside vacation homes. This is the psychology of the collector marketplace. It isn't just metal. It's survival. It's the thrill of owning what nearly no one else does, but the story deepens. The late 1960s represented a unique shift in American numismatics. Hoarding was rising. Investors were waking up to the idea that modern-day coins could become tomorrow's gold mines. The older generation still held on to the belief that Lincoln cents were just pocket change. The younger, sharper investors, they looked into strike quality, early die states, luster consistency. They understood opportunity when they saw it, and here's the twist most people never think about: even though the Philadelphia Mint struck millions, extremely few were preserved immediately after minting, meaning mint state survivors weren't common then, and they're even rarer now. Time is the greatest enemy of value. Every scratch, every fingerprint, every drawer they rattled through, removed another contender from the top population. Now consider this question: how many 1968 no-mint mark Lincoln cents might still be sitting in coffee cans, junk drawers, or inherited coin jars, misjudged as worthless copper? More than a few. And that uncertainty is where the suspense and excitement live. The search for such coins is part financial ambition, part living history. Each tiny portrait of Lincoln represents a moment when American currency was still deeply tactile, real metal, real weight, honest design. No QR codes. No digital wallets. A physical symbol of value, passed hand to hand across decades of American life, and the marketplace today reflects that nostalgia. High-net-worth collectors don't just buy a perfect 1968 Lincoln cent, they buy the mystique of having beaten time itself. Auction houses lean into that emotional pull: rich lighting, dark velvet presentation, hushed bidders leaning forward as the lot crosses the block. A simple copper cent becomes a generational trophy. Imagine someone in Ohio opening a relative's old coin box and sending in a coin for grading out of curiosity. A few weeks later, a padded envelope returns with a certification that changes their financial future. It has happened. Quietly. Without headlines. Because in the world of rare U.S. coins, fortunes are often made in silence. So here is the takeaway that serious collectors already know but the general public often misses: it's not the rarity of the date alone that drives value. It's the flawless survivor that shouldn't exist. The coin that defied circulation. The piece that proves lightning can strike in the numismatic world. Today, the 1968 no-mint mark Abraham Lincoln 1-cent piece remains a sleeper, ignored by millions, pursued by the few who understand the math of scarcity. Most of them won't be worth more than face value. Some may bring in small premiums. But that microscopic slice, those nearly perfect gems, are the reason numismatists keep searching, because somewhere out there, buried in pocket change or forgotten in a childhood collection, could be the next piece that shocks the market, stuns the auction floor, and writes the next headline in American coin collecting history. And if someone watching this video finds it, the world of rare U.S. coins will never look the same again. Here. In 2019, collectors were stunned when one of these San Francisco struck cents, barely larger than a thumbnail and weighing just 3.11 grams, sold for tens of thousands of dollars. And yet, whispers in the numismatic community speak of an extremely rare variety capable of reaching well into the millions. How could a coin millions once spent without a second thought now be worth more than a beachfront home? It begins in the early 1970s. The nation was shifting: Vietnam, inflation, and economic uncertainty. Amid this pressure, the U.S. Mint in San Francisco was pushing production hard. More than 500 million Lincoln cents rolled off the dies in 1971. But inside that massive push, a tiny number were struck with a doubled-up verse. The profile of Abraham Lincoln, the motto "In God We Trust," the bold liberty, each element shows a powerful, almost ghost-like duplication under magnification. The accident was caused by a misalignment deep in the die-making process, and the mint quickly corrected it. But a few coins had already escaped into circulation, and that is where the legend grew. Collectors love these moments, not just because of the rarity, but because the story taps into something emotional and thrilling: the hope that a forgotten coin in a desk drawer, cigar box, or inherited collection might be the one everyone else missed. Many people who grew up in the 1970s remember a jar full of change on the kitchen counter. Imagine, just for a moment, if one of those copper cents was hiding the doubled features that are now worth life-changing money. Before revealing exactly how valuable these coins have become, consider this numismatic truth: scarcity alone is not enough. Demand must exist. And in this case, demand is massive. The 1971 double die is considered one of the great modern discoveries, and serious investors hunt for certified examples in upper mint state grades. The highest known survivors are few, perhaps only a handful remain in pristine condition. So what can one of these tiny coppers be worth? Top-tier grading services have recorded sales of 1971 double dies reaching over $60,000, and those were not even the finest possible examples. Specialists quietly speculate that if a flawless, museum-level example came to auction, the final hammer price could cross 7 figures. The coin world has seen this happen before. A rare Lincoln cent sold for $1.7 million not long ago, setting the stage for a new record at any moment. Pause for a second. How many people have pulled out change over a lifetime without even glancing at the date, the mint mark, or the fine details pressed into the metal? How many fortunes have slipped through fingers because nobody knew what they were holding? And here is the surprise many beginners never realize: the 1971 S is not the only variety from that era showing dramatic doubling. The early 1970s were full of production stress and transitional die errors. To seasoned collectors, this decade is a gold mine dressed as small change back to the coin itself. To authenticate a true double die, look closely at the obverse. Lincoln's I should appear doubled. The lettering shows strong spread, bold, clean, unmistakable. Weak strike doubling, the kind caused by machine vibration, is worth little. But a true double die is a different creature entirely, and once seen properly, it's almost impossible to confuse. When news of record-breaking auction results surfaces, market behavior becomes predictable. Collections come out of safes. Old envelopes get opened. Estate dealers see a sudden rush of people who haven't thought about coins in 40 years. And yes, once in a while, someone walks in with the real thing. That is the dream numismatists quietly chase. Imagine finding one today. The weight of history. The whisper of copper worn smooth by decades of American life. And beneath the mint-aged surface, a secret that only a trained eye can recognize: the 1971 S Lincoln 1-cent piece is more than a coin. It is a time capsule, a lottery ticket, and proof that wealth sometimes hides in the smallest objects. So the next time you spot an old San Francisco cent, slow down. Check the lettering. Look carefully at Lincoln's profile. Because somewhere out there, one of these rare survivors still sits unnoticed, waiting to turn a collector's curiosity into $1 million story. It begins with a quiet whisper from the pocket change of America's bicentennial year, but beneath those ordinary copper tones lies a truth so startling that many collectors still miss it. A 1976 Denver-struck Abraham Lincoln 1-cent piece, the kind millions of Americans spent without a second thought, has been documented selling for life-altering money. Sometimes 5 figures. Sometimes 6. And in the rarest conditions, the theoretical value climbs into the millions. How is it possible that a coin most people tossed into desk drawers, coffee cans, or childhood piggy banks could transform into an investment with the power to change a family's financial future? To answer that, we go back nearly half a century, to a country celebrating its 200th birthday. In 1976, the Denver Mint was a powerhouse, striking billions of circulating coins at a pace the Founding Fathers could never have imagined. Among them, the Lincoln 1-cent piece, 95% copper, with the familiar portrait of the 16th president on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Billions were produced, yet not all were created equal. Some coins left the Denver facility with microscopic anomalies, stretched dies, doubled elements, minting pressure irregularities, and strike inconsistencies that only master collectors trained in the art of numismatic vision could detect. And one tiny detail could mean the difference between a coin worth a cent, and one worth more than a new American home. Before we reveal the traits that make these coins financially explosive, consider this: in the last decade, population reports from top grading services show that true high-grade survivors of the 1976 D are astonishingly rare. After a lifetime of circulation, most were scratched, worn, discolored, or damaged in childhood collections. The few that remained flawless were often locked away for decades, misplaced, inherited, or unnoticed. Ever wonder how many might still be out there today, somewhere, in a blue plastic binder in an attic, in a shoebox behind an old stack of sports cards, or in the bottom of a jar next to wheat cents and worn nickels? The kind of places collectors love to rediscover years later, like opening a time capsule with financial potential. So what exactly makes a 1976 D Lincoln worth fortunes? Imagine an example with full original mint luster, razor-sharp memorial columns, no nicks across Lincoln's jawline, and a perfectly centered strike that radiates copper brilliance. A survivor graded MS 67 or better. Stack one of those against the population data, and suddenly you realize you aren't just looking at a coin, you're holding a statistical rarity in your hand. Then there are the errors and varieties, a doubled motto where the letters I and God we trust split ever so slightly. A repunched D mint mark, visibly doubled under magnification. Die cracks that look like copper lightning across the memorial steps. These are the kinds of blink and you miss it details that fuel bidding wars among advanced collectors, and here's a curious twist. The market for early Lincoln Memorial cents is heating up faster than most investors realize. As the older collecting crowd begins transferring estates, fewer untouched high-grade examples are entering the marketplace. Supply drops, demand rises, and prices climb fast. What happens when nostalgia and scarcity collide? You get emotional bidding, collectors chasing the coins they grew up spending during the post-Vietnam era, wanting to own not just a piece of metal, but a piece of their memory. And emotional buyers fuel record prices. A question to consider: how many other modern Lincoln cents have already exploded in value while the public wasn't paying attention? More than most investors realize, this is why serious numismatists never underestimate a common coin in uncommon condition. Because sometimes the American dream isn't minted in silver or gold, but in the humblest denomination of all, and as you sift through old change, coin rolls, and inherited collections, remember, the 1976 D. Lincoln 1-cent piece may not announce itself with patriotic colors or booming fanfare. It was struck quietly, spent loudly, and forgotten universally, which is exactly why finding the right one now could change everything. In the quiet corners of coin collections across America, a single penny has sparked whispers among collectors that some would call unbelievable. A 1978 Lincoln 1-cent piece, with no mint mark. On its surface, it looks ordinary, an Abraham Lincoln portrait struck at the Philadelphia facility, the familiar Lincoln Memorial etched on the reverse. But look closer. Much closer, because this small copper disc hides a secret that could change the way you think about modern coinage forever. For decades, the U.S. Mint stamped pennies with subtle identifiers, a D for Denver, and S for San Francisco. And yet, in 1978, a rare anomaly slipped through the cracks. A Lincoln cent, minted in Philadelphia, but missing its mark entirely. No P. No D. Just, blanked at first glance, you might dismiss it as a mere curiosity. But collectors know the truth, errors like this are whispers of history frozen in metal. They speak to human imperfection, to the machinery that failed, to a fleeting moment when rarity was created, not by design, but by accident. Why does this matter to investors, to collectors, to those who understand the pulse of the numismatic market? Because scarcity drives desire. A single misplaced penny can trigger bidding wars that echo far beyond the quiet shelves of hobbyists. One auction in 2022 saw a similar mint mark error fetch over $50,000. Imagine a 1978 penny with no mark, a coin that, under the right eye, could surpass expectations entirely. Pause and picture this, a coin you might have walked past on your kitchen counter, under your child's loose change, or in a forgotten drawer. That coin could be a vault of unseen potential. Now, here's where it gets even more intriguing. Not all no-mint mark pennies are created equal. Experts search for subtle clues, the strike's sharpness, the precise copper hue, the way Lincoln's cheek meets the rim. Minor deviations, almost imperceptible, can elevate a coin from a curiosity to a treasure. Collectors, especially those aged 30 to 70, know the thrill of discovery. You don't just buy coins, you own fragments of American history. That Lincoln 1-cent piece carries more than copper and zinc, it carries a story of industrial oversight, of fleeting opportunity, and of wealth quietly waiting to be recognized. Ever wonder why some coins vanish from circulation entirely? only to resurface decades later in pristine condition. It's not luck. It's timing, it's knowledge, and sometimes, it's patience. Imagine holding that 1978 no-mint mark penny in your hand, knowing the next person who sees it might pay more than a lifetime of spare change could be you. So, what's the value? Today, estimates fluctuate wildly. Some see a few $1,000s, others speculate tens of thousands, with the truly rare, perfectly preserved specimens commanding even higher bids. One thing is certain, this isn't a coin you stumble across every day. It's a quiet testament to opportunity hiding in plain sight, and here's the final thought: while history is written in books, in metal, it's preserved in coins like this. A 1978 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark is more than currency. It's a reminder that fortune favors the observant, the patient, the collector who sees potential where others see ordinary. So next time you sift through spare change, pause. The ordinary can hide the extraordinary. And in that pause, a fortune may be waiting for you. In 1979, the United States Mint quietly produced a coin that most Americans never noticed as it passed through their pockets, their change jars, and their cash registers. An Abraham Lincoln 1-cent piece, struck at the Philadelphia facility, or so it should have been, yet some bear no mint mark at all. And in the world of numismatics, that seemingly small omission can turn a simple penny into a multi-million-dollar treasure. Imagine holding a coin that looks ordinary, coppery brown, just shy of an inch in diameter, Lincoln's profile familiar to anyone who has ever reached into their change. But this coin carries a secret that has made collectors stop cold, whisper to one another, and in some cases, rewrite the rules of rare coin valuation. A missing P, the tiny letter that usually declares a coin's origin, transforms a mundane 1979 1-cent into a legend whispered about in private auctions and high-stakes collector circles. But why does this happen? How does a coin minted in the heart of Philadelphia escape its identifying mark? In 1979, production lines ran fast. Die errors, misalignment, human oversight, all conspired to create a coin that should not exist. And yet, it does. Few know it. Fewer still have one tucked away, perhaps forgotten in a dusty coin folder. You might wonder, could a single missing mint mark truly turn pocket change into a $1 million opportunity? The answer lies in rarity, demand, and human psychology. Collectors are drawn to what is scarce, driven by the thrill of possession and the fear that someone else might claim the prize first. A 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln 1-cent is not just metal and ink. It is a story frozen in copper, a moment where error met chance, and fortune met patience. Consider the case of one collector in the Midwest. He bought a handful of 1979 pennies at face value, never imagining one was a no-mint mark variety. Years later, a single coin from that batch sold for over $1 million at auction, transforming a modest stack of cents into a life-changing fortune. What if you've unknowingly held one in your collection for decades? The market for rare U.S. coins is volatile, mysterious, and intoxicating. Prices fluctuate not just with scarcity but with the whispers of auctions, the certified grading of a coin, and the stories each piece carries. Investors and collectors alike chase not only the metal but the narrative, the human connection, the nostalgia of holding history in their hands. And here's something most people overlook: the 1979 Lincoln 1-cent without a mint mark is more than an investment. It's a bridge to the past, to the very mechanics of the Philadelphia Mint, to the meticulous labor of coiners who shaped our everyday currency. Each tiny imperfection, each absent letter, tells a story of chance, of timing, and of human error, moments that collectors recognize as rare and, more importantly, priceless. So, the next time you sift through old jars of pennies, or organize coins in folders passed down through generations, pause. Look closely at the Abraham Lincoln profile. Inspect the field. Notice the absence, the subtle anomaly. Because within that quiet copper disc could lie a secret worth more than anyone ever imagined. History, fortune, and the thrill of discovery converge in a single 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent. And for those who recognize it, the opportunity is no longer theoretical, it is tangible, fleeting, and profoundly transformative. Few realize that in the unassuming pockets of everyday Americans lies a coin so rare, it could turn a casual collector into a millionaire overnight. The 2006 Lincoln 1 cent, a penny struck at the Denver Mint, seems ordinary at first glance. Copper-clad, familiar, part of the change jingling in registers across the nation. Yet beneath its familiar surface hides a story steeped in error, scarcity, and unbridled potential. Most pennies are mass-produced, their value fixed by metal and face, yet the 2006 D is an anomaly. Somewhere, in a quiet minting misstep, a handful of these Lincoln cents were struck with an unusual flaw, one that sends shivers through numismatists. Imagine holding a coin whose misprint is so subtle that casual eyes miss it entirely, yet experts know instantly its worth could climb into the millions. This isn't about luck, it's about recognition. Understanding the precise engravings, the minute variations in strike depth, and the faint imprint anomalies that differentiate a common penny from a potential fortune. The 2006 Lincoln 1 cent isn't just copper and zinc. It's a fragment of history, a testimony to minting imperfection, and a secret opportunity hidden in plain sight. Collectors who have discovered these coins often speak in hushed tones about their finds. One dealer, recalling a single misstruck 2006 D, described the thrill as like discovering a lost chapter of American history in your own pocket. And while most coins from that year circulate invisibly, a select few carry stories of scarcity that could redefine wealth for the owner. Have you ever wondered why some coins skyrocket in value while others remain humble currency? It's the psychology of scarcity, the thrill of discovery, the quiet promise that what seems ordinary could, in fact, be extraordinary. A coin isn't merely metal, it's a vessel of history, a snapshot of the economy, and an investment in both nostalgia and future wealth. But here's the twist. Not every 2006 Lincoln 1 cent is destined for millionaire status. Only those with the precise mint anomaly, the exact deviation from perfection, hold that secret. And that raises the question, how can you tell if a coin in your jar or drawer is one of the few that matter? Small clues in mint marks, the alignment of Lincoln's bust, the subtle layering of metal, all are signals waiting for the trained eye to decode. Imagine sifting through thousands of coins, each familiar in hand, only to find one that carries the promise of unimaginable value. One discovery can rewrite a collector's life, turning decades of casual interest into real financial opportunity. Nostalgia and greed intertwine in these moments, memories of past pennies mingling with the sharp excitement of what could be gained. The 2006 Lincoln 1 cent is more than a coin. It's a quiet reminder that history rewards those who look closely, that fortune often lies in details unnoticed by the masses. For investors and collectors alike, this coin represents a threshold, between the mundane and the extraordinary, the familiar and the legendary. And in that gap, opportunity waits, because in the world of numismatics, one small misstep in minting can create a fortune, and one ordinary penny, overlooked by millions, can become priceless.